Hello, this is Michael Michailidis from Ancient Greece Revisited. And today I want to do something slightly different. This is not a book review, but it's not a conventional episode. I want to address comments that I get from you in the threads, and I try to reply personally to almost everyone, but it's good to actually lump together some concerns that you may have and try to answer them at the best of my ability. One of these concerns has to do with ancient Greek religion. Now, we have noticed, to our surprise somewhat, that some of our most popular episodes have to do with Dionysus. And funnily enough, the first one that talks about the work of Otto in terms of Dionysus was definitely not my favorite. It was, if I had one episode to remake, it would be that one. I thought it was very convoluted, complicated, but you loved it. So thank you for watching. And immediately after that, and speaking to some of you, I realized that there is a big interest in the god Dionysus. But this interest is linked to an even larger interest within our modern culture. And that is the interest for the mysteries, for mysticism in general. It's a bit of a contradiction how in our very technological age, people, it's almost like they swing back to the other extreme and have a tremendous yearning, not for conventional religion, which they can find in Christianity or Islam or any other faith, but in the mysteries. They love the idea of hidden books containing arcane knowledge, rituals that can take you to the astral plane. And they look for these things in ancient Greeks, and sometimes they look for them to me and to what I can offer them. And we are very interested in all these things, and we are planning to make a series of episodes. But in this particular video, I just want to clarify something that I think is very confused about ancient Greece religion. The attitudes that I see of modern people who are interested in ancient Greek religion are the attitude of Hellenistic Greece. Right? They are the religion that you mostly find at the end of ancient Greece, during its cultural decline in a certain way, right? So the mystery cults, the Dionysiac rituals, the mysteries are very typical of this later phase of ancient Greece. In fact, to go back, what I need to clarify is that two were the religious currents throughout the history of ancient Greece. It's not fair to call them religion. The concept of religion is somewhat modern, and it's not fair to project it back to the ancient Greeks. But there were two distinct spiritual, religious tendencies, religious orientations, you may call it. In fact, orientations is a term that I prefer because they point to physical orientations. I believe that one such orientation pointed upwards towards the sky, another one pointed downwards towards the earth. And these orientations come from different places, historically and even geographically, and merge together to form the religious attitudes of the ancient Greeks. Okay, the first and newest was the Olympian Faith, the Olympian pantheon, where Zeus reigned supreme with his wife Hera, Ares, Athena. The 12 Olympian gods typify a religious attitude that we first find in Homer's epic, the Iliad. This is the most, let's say, Indo-European aspect of Greek culture. This is the aspect that connects ancient Greeks to other Indo-European cultures. It worships a thunder god, a father god, a sky god, a masculine god. It worships masculine traits. Athena, who was a woman, was considered great exactly because she had these masculine traits. She was a virgin, she never had a man. She was a warrior. Her epithets mentioned her as manlike, which was supposed to be a word of praise. Okay, a man-like goddess. So you see in these, Hera, who was a full woman, a woman's woman, you may say, it's somewhat demoted, not in her actual hierarchy, because she was queen of the Olympians, but she was cheated upon by Zeus. She's often portrayed as a little hysterical, a little losing control of her emotions. So you see, the Olympian world is a man's world. And the Homer of epics were a man's field of action. Okay. In contrast to that, we find an earlier part of Greek religion, which is the Minoan or Pelasgian pre-Indo-European. There is a pre-Indo-European layer in Greek culture and in Greek religion. And this is best seen, perhaps not started, but best seen in the so-called Minoan civilization. I say so-called because probably the Minoans themselves didn't call themselves Minoans, but that's the name that archaeologists use to denote the civilization. And there we find a very different spiritual orientation, which points downwards towards the Earth Mother. The image that you may get conceptually is of a great being that stretches as far as the eye can see, the Earth, being of feminine character, a real feminine who gives endless birth. Remember that a lot of archaeologists, psychologists believe that ancient man, and when I say ancient, I mean Stone Age cultures or before, hadn't yet made the connection between sex and conception and birth. So they thought that women just, because obviously they had sex all the time and women gave birth all the time, they just hadn't made the connection. And so the image they had of a woman was that through ways miraculous, keeps giving birth. The earth keeps giving birth. Seeds are buried and plants grow and animals eat them and we eat the animals, and we're nurtured by this earth who just keeps on giving, but keeps on taking as well. Because when we die, we return to this earth who's going to dissolve us and give us birth again. So the image that these pre-Indo-European Greeks may have had, we have to be careful when you use our terms, is an image of an eternal return with the earth goddess in the middle, eternal, unchanging, ever giving birth, but dual in aspect. An aspect of birth and nourishment, and a terrible, Kali aspect of death and of taking back what she gave. And around her orbited a male god, lesser in importance, perhaps something called a demon in ancient Greek, who would be born of her, sometimes would become her lover, right? And then set and be reborn again. So the image of the sun is such an image, the image of the moon. So you have a world where a woman, a feminine force dominates, and man is ephemeral. He's born, he's as good as he is with his spear in war and with his penis in the sexual act. And then, like the bulls, like the sacrificial bulls that Minoans used, and remember, sacrificial animals throughout history have always been male. So the male bull, strong, powerful, beautiful, gets sacrificed, men get disposed of by the Great Mother. She doesn't need them anymore, she's gonna have more and more and more. These two attitudes were exemplified in myth by different peoples. We had a 4-part series on the Argonaut's journey, and there you have an image of Jason being the more, say, Indo-European, solar, Olympian kind of hero, and he travels to the end of his known world, to Colchis, and he meets a witch by the name of Medea, and if one observes her symbols, her powers, her symbols, her association with the night, her association with the dark goddess Hecate, who's the earth mother in her negative aspect, her association with bulls, she's like a bull tamer, and that just shouts a Minoan priestess. And so you have these two cultures that actually came in contact, clashed, one becoming dominant, the Olympian Indo-European culture becoming dominant, the other Minoan becoming subjugated but not entirely disappearing. And through that merger, you have what became known as ancient Greece. So these two trends were separate, intertwined. When Greece was at its height, the first Olympian Indo-European was dominant and the other was more subjugated. Remember that the god Dionysus was worshipped outside of the city. The city was an Olympian issue, right? Dionysus was worshipped outside of the city. And then, as it waned, as this culture waned, the destruction of the Peloponnesian War, the destruction of the city-states, the weakening of the ancient Greek spirit proper during the Hellenistic time, strangely inversed this hierarchy, and the more Indo-European aspects became lesser, and the pre-Indo-European, the mystery cults came out more on top, and people became interested in astrology that they borrowed from the Zoroastrians. They became interested in life after death, the Hermetic texts, so the mysteries, the worship of the goddess Hecate, all became prominent there. So it's very telling that today it's this latter aspects. We're mostly, spiritually at least, decadent Hellenists than Olympian Greeks in our spiritual attitudes. And to me, it's important that we do separate the two, and we don't just say, well, the ancient Greeks believe blah, 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 and we're mixing two very, very different aspects of ancient Greece. So the more we continue with the show, with your support, the more we're going to try and clarify these. And please, we do rely on the kindness of strangers. Like, subscribe, consider supporting us on Patreon, and keep the questions flowing. Thank you very much.